Does it feel like learning something to be better at your job in the nonprofit sector is a lot harder than it should be? For me, that's what I felt for a very long time. My name's Tim Sarrantonio. I am the founder of the Generosity Spectrum, the nonprofit sector's first educational gaming studio. And so I want to talk about the game design process because this is new. This is new for me, but it's also new for the nonprofit sector itself. So I'm going to use YouTube to explore the game design process and how I'm going to get my first game out into the hands of fundraisers and other nonprofit leaders. So the way that we're going to explore how games are designed is going to actually start with playtesting. So I'm going to go back in future videos and talk about how I got to this point. But playtesting is the most important thing because that's where you get to be involved. Playtesting is simply defined as a way to assess whether a game is something that is working for the players themselves. Now, a lot of what I am doing when it comes to playtesting is inspired by Amy Jo Kim's feedback loop. And so this is something that I'm going to explore in a lot more detail. But ultimately, as we go through this video, we're going to talk about the importance of designing prompts, of observing actions by players, of seeing the consequences of those and listening. And that's a very important skill, one that even I have to work on a very fair amount, is to not jump in and want to actually say something. So even as a nonprofit leader, you can see that there's going to be some interesting parallels in your own work when you're thinking about new projects or marketing campaigns or even just brainstorming with your team on how to solve a problem. The feedback loop process is something that anybody can use. But for this series, I'm going to be focusing in on how does it apply to gameplay testing. So again, what exactly do I mean by play testing? Well, in this case, it's a learning process. The core definition that we can use is that it's a structured learning process used to observe, analyze, and diagnose system clarity, player decision-making, and meaning-making. And so this is not the same as a survey. In fact, I started with some surveys and then very quickly moved on into a more conversational process. So ultimately, I am trying to understand for my game whether it resonates with people. Will it be easy to pick up? Is it easy to understand? Do I need to add different elements or change different language or add different icons? And these are things that are then applied after I hear and I listen and I write down notes. I'm going to actually apply that into the game design itself. And I'm going to show you where I am in the process so far in the next section, so you can get an idea of what I mean by playtesting and the feedback loop. So I'm going to do one quick example of how playtesting can work in practice. Now, when we're looking for feedback loops, I'm generally trying to observe a few key things, whether people understand the mechanics of the game, because that's at the process where I'm at right now. We don't care about design heavily. We do care about whether design aspects will help people later on, but the actual design doesn't matter. And here's a great example that I'll use for today's video. This is the very first archetype card that I came up with, and it is terrible. It is very, very busy. I started playtesting, and even with my kids and my family members, and I started saying, okay, how do I want to translate the ideas into what I am trying to get across? And so there's a lot of things here that are pretty terrible when it comes to how I want the game to work. First, it's very busy, right? Second, this doesn't necessarily match at all the brand aesthetic that I want to have. So there's even some things where you're going to see the design of the company come along later because this is not serious and we're trying to have a little bit more serious work. Doesn't mean that games can't be fun. Doesn't mean that games can't be helpful. So that's why the next iteration of the game expanded on that. Because you, as a nonprofit leader, are busy. You do not have a lot of time to figure things out. And so the most important question that I'm going to have in the beginning is, how quick is it to understand what's happening with the game? I want the game to be able to be played anywhere. You can take it outside, you can take it to a restaurant, a coffee shop, wherever. And so if you don't want to pull this out because it's going to be too confusing to actually get going, that's not a good thing. So everything starts with this archetype card. Now that was inspired by a previous deck that I've been using for a while for marketing that I'm going to talk about another time in terms of inspirations and archetype design. But ultimately, playtesting has helped me get to a stage where I not only understand whether these cards are going to work for people, but I also have started to be able to identify other types of cards and improvements through the playtesting process. Very early on, for example, it was indicated that I have some prompt cards that are going to help people think through some scenarios and situations and how their character would react. And one of the things that was going to help a lot, icons. So when I go to design, that's going to be an important part. So ultimately, this is the basics of a playtesting process, is just observation. So asking a few questions on what you ultimately want to see people do in the stage that you're in. I've been very clear. I don't care about design elements. It doesn't matter if it doesn't look great right now, but do the words make sense? If it is something that you want to be more clear, what do you want to be more clear about it? And then we'll address those after I take some notes and do some further observation. So let's bring back Amy Jo Kim's fantastic process. So this is an adaptation. I'm also going to include right below a QR code that's going to go to a really good Medium piece that she wrote that gets into this further. But generally, I am trying to invite people in. We saw how I'm going to look at different elements, such as the archetype card and whether the language and the way it's positioned in the game makes sense. And then I'm going to sit back and observe. And that's probably the hardest part of any type of playtest experience. And you know that during board meetings too. You put an idea out there and you sit and you wait and you sit in that uncomfortable silence. That is growth. And so being able to then take that, put it back in, make the game stronger, that's what's so exciting. In my next video, I'm actually going to drill into my specific game and what problem it is trying to solve. So I'm going to talk about the design mechanics, some of the decisions that I made to get to this point, on what type of game it should be. There's so many infinite types of things, and so I'm going to drill into that in my next video.